Welcome back to the playground. This is the recap video for Call 3. It introduces you to the process of meeting your inner narrator. This week, we introduced a process called Meet Your Inner Narrator, which draws on the tenets of narrative therapy. The process is centered on developing the character of the inner narrator as a way of challenging your story from a different direction. Here, you will also be introduced to the characters of the ally and the antagonist, but not in the way you might expect. Narrative therapy is interesting. It aims to separate the individual from the problem, allowing the individual to externalize their issues rather than internalize them. In doing so, they are able to have a relationship with the problem and engage with it in unique, creative, and sometimes playful ways. So today we are going to turn the problem of your money story into a character and see what you can learn about it by relating to it in a different way. For the next 10 odd minutes, I want you to suspend your disbelief and enter into a liminal zone where you can meet your inner narrator. This internal narrator is the keeper of our stories, and it's their job to lovingly tend to and keep these stories alive. These are the stories that our realities are anchored in. So it's an important job, and our inner narrators take that job very seriously. Like good, compliant, unquestioning children, we sit at the feet of our inner narrators and listen to the stories they tell. It's not a passive listening, though. These stories come with expectations. These stories want us to think a certain way, and feel a certain way, and behave a certain way. And everything is good and fine in the world created by these stories as long as we remain allies to the story. That is, we think, feel, and act in a way that is congruent with the expectations of the story. But that all goes sideways when we start to question the story. What happens when we stop being the quiet kid, listening in awe, and become the one up the back of the group who won't stop asking questions, who keeps interrupting, who breaks the flow of the story? What happens when we become the child who challenges the story until the fateful words slip from our lips, "I don't believe you anymore"? What does our inner narrator do when we stop seeing their authority as absolute? This is the entry point of the bully energy. Maybe first up, our inner narrator ignores us until our interruptions can no longer be ignored. Perhaps then they acknowledge the questions but refuse to answer them. Maybe they talk over the top of us or shame us for threatening to break the status quo. Eventually, they get angry. They don't take kindly to repeated challenges to their authority. After all, they are the expert of the story, not us. Our inner narrator wants us to sit down and shut up, to conform to the reality they anchor, to behave in accordance with the story's rules and expectations. And maybe they will do and say anything to make us to return to the way it used to be, but there is no going back. Our eyes and hearts have been opened to something other than this stale old story. We feel it in our bones, in our blood. We want more. And as we feel it, the world we thought we were in, the grand hall in a castle where we sat regaled by tales from a lauded bard, or around a campfire with someone we thought we could trust, that world tears, and through that rupture, we discover where we really are, in a tiny, dark room with nothing but a disembodied voice that echoes from the past. We have a choice in this moment. We can go back through the tear in reality and return to the known, where we will sit quietly at the feet of someone else who will determine our future, or we can leave. We have challenged the inner narrator enough to know there are different playgrounds outside of this tiny cell. There are new friends waiting to meet and new adventures to go on, and most of all, new stories to fashion for ourselves. On the other side of this dark space, we become the protagonist, no longer reliant on the narrator to fashion our stories. We are now the maker and keeper of our own stories. Are you ready to meet your inner narrator? The rest of this video is a guided process. Please download the worksheet. I will ask you a series of questions to guide you through the process and recommend that you pause the video after each question. You can take as long as you wish to do this, but I recommend you do it in one sitting and trust what comes to mind first. You can always go deeper. Let's start. First up, let's give your narrator a name. So stop the video now and name your narrator. Now tell me where your story is being told. You can go into as much or as little detail as you want. Stop the video now and explore your narrator's setting. This is a big one, so take some time. What is the story your narrator is telling? If you can condense it into a single sentence, that would be brilliant. Now stop the video and write down the story. What is the theme of your story? Some of the themes which have come up include worthiness, imposter syndrome, credibility, visibility, silence, hiding or being trapped, shame. But remember, your story and your experience is unique. So stop the video now and explore your themes. Now it is time to meet yourself as ally. Here, as the ally of the story, you remain congruent and play the accepted parts of the story. In this role, how does the narrator want you to think? How do they want you to feel? How do they want you to act? Stop the video now and explore the emotional, mental, and behavioral parameters of this story. It's time to challenge the story. Welcome to becoming the antagonist. This is the next step toward becoming the protagonist. Here, your motivations stop aligning with those of the story. So tell me, how do you start to think? How do you start to feel? How do you start to behave now that you look at the story with discerning eyes? Stop the video and explore these new mental, emotional, and behavioral dimensions. Open yourself up all the way to what's possible. Now that you wear the clothes and the attitude of the antagonist, and you feel, think, and behave at odds to the story, what does the narrator do to try to bring you back into the fold of the story? Stop this video and observe the narrator's behavior for a while with as much curiosity as you can muster. Write down what you observe. It's time to step back and consider what you know. Having observed the narrator, what do you know about them that you didn't know before? Stop the video and take a moment to bring together what you have observed and how that might or might not change your opinion of them. And you have arrived at the last step. Having experienced yourself as the ally of the story and then challenged it in the shoes of the antagonist. Having experienced what the narrator has done to try to keep you in the story and what you know about the narrator now that you've seen them rattled, having glimpsed, felt, and moved for a few precious minutes, like the antagonist you are becoming, what do you choose to do next? What is to become of your inner narrator? And how do you chart a course toward becoming the protagonist? And that's the end of this process, but probably not the end of your exploration of this story. Whether you welcome your inner narrator in to know them better, whether you choose to evolve your relationship, or if you know the right thing is to let them go, change is now headed your way. We will talk more about transmutation and release in future group calls, though this call has a very brief discussion on both topics toward the end. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you in our Mighty Networks playground or on a future group call.